I can be extreme sometimes with food, because I love the farmer's market, and I want all the grass-fed, local, organic, because it's good.
I just took them to the hospital if they ate sugar or something.
Yeah.
And then we're going to have to do this every time if you eat those crackers that mom didn't make.
It's just not what I was trying to do, because you want your children to come to you. You want them to be able to speak to you. And if my son can't tell me he had a piece of pizza, we have a problem.
Yeah.
So
what are some of the big things that tend to get in people's way, either before they start with us or that stuff that we have to navigate with them?
One of the main things is really one of the things we were just talking about is that.
Welcome to the Fear No Food podcast, health and nutrition stuff for us normal people.
Well, Leigh Caliendo, thanks for coming on the very first episode
Yes,
of
I'm so
Fear No
excited.
Food podcast. So Leigh, you're a health coach here at Revitalize. How did that come about?
Well, I was an athlete growing up. I was a competitive swimmer and dancer. And so I think that led to kind of a natural inclination towards health and wellness and nutrition. So I've always been curious. And then really what moved the needle was when I became a mother, and both of my children have gluten sensitivity. So I really dove into, that research and cooking everything from scratch and all of that. Then I decided, I'm going to go back to school and I'm going to study nutrition, clinical nutrition, because I thought, I want to work in the hospital setting. That's my place. So I did work at Cancer Treatment Center of America for a little while. And then I thought, this is actually not my place. I want to be in the preventative. I want to be touching people's lives before they're at CTCA, before they're in that situation. Because it's hard to sit with someone at that point and talk about eating vegetables. It's hard. And so I was like, okay, I need a different setting.
Tell me more about that. So you were working with folks who already had a terminal diagnosis or some type of diagnosis. Yes. And the whole goal was to say, hey, we could maybe reverse this with nutrition, but that was the basis. But truly, like some of these people, it wouldn't have made any difference at that point. And that's it's hard to sit in a room with someone, and usually also a family member, a spouse, and try to talk about nutrition, knowing that possibly won't make a difference. Totally.
Yeah.
And, there's a big push in recent months and years of folks saying, hey, something's wrong with our food system. We're more infertile. We're more prone to cancer. We're more prone to chronic illnesses. It isn't just we're lazy. There's something wrong with our food system. Do you have any hot takes on that or unique thoughts on kind of the food that we're eating in general?
Yes, of course. I'm in the research. I'm listening to the experts in the field, and I obviously seeing what is available. And I do think, when you really get down to it and you look at processed food, what is in it, all those extra ingredients, you look at, and it's not just like the food is one piece. And some will say, it's the expense of good food. Well, yes, that is an issue, but we can buy vegetables that are affordable. We love organic. It doesn't have to be organic. Vegetables being the priority, fruit being the priority, right?
Yep.
Right. But then also we look at, stress, we look at environmental toxins, we look at inactivity, of our young people and all people. But, I think I'm probably a little keyed into the young ones, and, when they're planted in front of their devices.
Totally.
And so it's very, it's very systemic, but definitely in our food, the dyes, the chemicals, that's absolutely going to affect all of those other, maybe we're not detoxing as well as we could be. That's leading to our stress, our overall systemic stress. So it's very much all related.
Totally, all interconnected.
Yep.
I saw a video of Dr. Mark Hyman just talking about, he calls it the exposome. So it's like, what are the thoughts that we're exposed to, the relationships we're exposed to, the stress that we are chronically under, like all of that washes over our biology, as well as, of course, the food we intake and things like that. And it's all so connected. And I think we love to just parse out. It's like, oh, just this magic pill will solve this, or just doing yoga or meditating 5 minutes a day. It's like, well, it has to be more holistic.
It does. Yeah. And I'm sure you've probably heard some too, where we might be set up genetically in a certain way. And then when we talk about like our environment washing over, you know, what we're thinking, what we're watching, what we're eating, it turns on and off various genetic traits, which then might lead to cancer, obesity, diabetes, all the things. Yeah. So it is.
We had a member, his name's Steve, a number of years ago. He probably referred to us a dozen or so folks from, I think he was a pastor. But he would say like, yeah, genetics are the gun you're given, but you don't have to use it.
Exactly.
And I just thought that always sticks with me. It's like, yeah, like there are certain predispositions, but like you're not a victim fully. Like there is a lot that's still under your control.
Absolutely.
And like how those genetics are expressed.
Absolutely.
So growing up in your house as a mom, like were your kids just like vegetables only? Like
my gosh, my poor children.
Yeah, tell me a little bit. I got little ones. So like, how did you navigate that? So of course there was like the medical side of like, hey, they're gluten intolerant, or we've got, you know, potential for celiacs. Obviously we have to get that out of here. But like, what did it look like for you?
Yeah, that's such a good question. And I'm just going to be really vulnerable here. I was over the top. I was so over the top. You know, we were that family. I brought their own piece of cake and their own pizza to the parties. And I did all the things. We had no sugar in the house and I was like making crackers from scratch. And but I was so passionate. I was so excited about what I was learning and providing for my children. Like my intentions truly were honorable. But what I learned through that is that children really need autonomy. They really do. And they are going to go out in the world and they are going to be exposed to processed foods and different things at school. We cannot totally shelter them from that. So,
but I want to.
I want to. I know. And when they're little, I mean, you get to a certain extent. But when my children had the ability to eat foods we didn't have in our house, like sugary foods, I mean, they really went for it.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
And
so do you feel like it being kind of more structured, maybe overly structured, it backfired a little bit?
It did. I would say yes. And I would definitely, and I coach differently when we talk about, you know, family health and feeding, you know, children. I would have provided the children more autonomy. I would have given them more choice. You know, even, you know, it's hard with the gluten and the allergy, but it wasn't a situation where if they ate, they were going to the hospital. So maybe loosening up on that a little bit, but really giving them more choice.
You should have just took them to the hospital if they ate sugar or something. And then like, we're going to have to do this every time if you eat those crackers that mom didn't make.
Because I think it did lead to, you know, hiding food and sneaking food. And at some point, I realized I was like, this is not what I was trying to do, because you want your children to come to you. You want them to be able to speak to you. And if my son can't tell me he had a piece of pizza, we have a problem. So that was like, okay, I was like, whoop, okay, we're going to try again. So, what I emphasize now when I am working with clients that, you know, have questions about their family, or even young people that come into the wellness clinic, that we, number one, lead by example. That's the most important thing that we can do. You know, make sure that we have the veggies and the fruit and good protein, and make sure that we're hydrating and we're exercising and we're practicing stress management and all the things as best we can. But, you know, we're going to have the most impact on our children by leading by example. And then encouraging them to be included in the process of, I mean, my guys cooked with me always, but picking out recipes and them choosing, even if it's something that like maybe doesn't sit right.
Yeah.
But, letting them have a lot of autonomy in the process, I think is really, really important. So, and sometimes they might eat some things that are not, like the healthiest choice. Yeah. But you're empowering them to make choices, and
there's like less shame around it.
Exactly.
They're having to hide it.
They're not hiding it because we want them to trust us.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Totally. I one of the things we learned, I shared on another podcast I was actually just on, but when we were doing some trauma-informed parenting stuff with our foster kids, there was this tactic this one family used that I loved, where they basically just had like a yes basket, where it was like, these are the foods, no matter when you ask, especially with kids who have food, like they don't know when their next meal is coming. So just that they have that agency of like, oh, I can always go to this basket. There will always be some food in there. And no matter when I want it, I can take it. And and just giving them that agency to like, I have some control over this. I don't have to go hide it. It'll always be full. And that's the healthy stuff. And then the top shelf stuff they can't reach is like the every once in a while treats and stuff that maybe is a little bit less optimal. But
yeah, I love that. I've also seen a tactic that I've seen with really picky eaters. And, there's a range of picky eaters when we're talking about, like, there's the children that if you wait long enough, they're going to eat.
Yeah, that's my daughter.
Yeah.
Sure.
And then there's the children that they're not going to eat.
Yeah, they're stubborn.
It's not going to happen. Yeah. So doing a menu. So you write the menu out and they're like, oh, can I have the whatever, the cookies? You're like, oh, is it on the menu? Oh, it's not on the menu today, but we can put it on the menu for tomorrow. Yeah. That's a really powerful tool for agency and autonomy too.
Yeah. Or they still have a view and a voice on what's happening. Yeah. That's a good one.
And it's interesting too, if you think about grown-ups need that same thing.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. I was just thinking, like, we kind of do that with some of our members, where it's like, is that on your list? It isn't, but it could be, and it will be soon. Or when can we put it on the list in a strategic way?
Exactly. It's not an all or none. It's not a feast or famine. It's nourishing adequately, and then on occasion having those, whatever that is for you personally.
Yeah. Treats like treats.
Exactly.
It's good. And what are some of the things that get people hung up? Like whether that you've seen that with your previous work with Cancer Center of America or Treatment Center of America or here at Revitalize, like what are some of the big things that tend to get in people's way, either before they start with us or that stuff that we have to navigate with them? Yeah,
that's a great question. And I think that one of the main things is really one of the things we were just talking about is that feast or famine mentality. We wake up in the morning, we think, oh, we are going to be, carb free today. Right. We are, we are done with the carbs. And so you
2 hours later, you're just like going through the cupboards.
Exactly. And, you go through your day and you're not eating any carbohydrates. I'm just using this for example, but it's a good one. And you feel good because you're rested and you're motivated. But then, now you've had to get up and you've had to drive to work and you've had to make all these decisions and you've had to maybe be nice when you didn't feel like being nice. And by the end of the day, you're fatigued. You have decision fatigue and you haven't had any carbohydrates all day and you're hungry and you walk in the door and you eat a bag of chips because your body needs instant fuel and you haven't fueled properly throughout the day. So, and I think that, and then you feel shame about it.
Yeah.
So that to me is like one of like the top issue where we have to learn we deserve to nourish our bodies. We deserve to eat. We deserve to feel full and nourishing adequately throughout the day.
Yeah.
Eating all of our protein, eating good carbohydrates throughout the whole day so that when you get home and you do have decision fatigue and you are, tired from your day, that you can continue to make good choices. Yeah. So that's number one.
When you say good carbohydrates, give me some examples of good carbohydrates for maybe somebody who's like, what was a good carbohydrate?
Yeah, and I don't mean to I'm not trying to label food good or bad. But when I'm just thinking complex carbohydrates that have, a lot of fiber, like beans and legumes and whole grains and vegetables, starchy vegetables like carrots and squash and peas and those fruit, those types of things. And then obviously I'm not like opposed to grains, but those are great and have their place in our diet. But so, rice and, pastas and quinoa and those types of things. Yeah.
Solid. Yeah. It's funny how like, I feel like we've talked to, a lot of people over the years, and it's like, there are folks, they're literally sacrificing themselves to the idol of work or the idol of busyness, and it's like, I remember talking to some lady, she's like, I'm not allowed to leave my desk to go to the bathroom. I'm like, what do you mean you're not allowed to leave your desk? She's like, oh, I can't drink because if I have to go to the bathroom too often. And I'm like, lady, we need to get another job. Like, send your boss my way. Tell him to bring his cup and meet me out back, because this is like, sounds like slavery, not like, free agency here. But yeah. What else? Is there anything else?
Gosh, what else? Feast or famine, that all or nothing idea where like people, they'll have cravings, and they deny them. And so two things happen often where, let's say, for example, like I'm really craving something sweet, but instead of, I just deny myself that. So instead of just having that cookie I wanted, now I'm just like eating a whole bunch of something else. Where if you just like had the cookie, moved on, you'd be fine. Or a lot of times people are very fearful that like, oh, if I have that one cookie, then I'm going to eat all the cookies, but that can create issues later again because you're restricting, there's a lot of fear involved in that, where even if you just like have the cookies and maybe you plan on having one, instead you have more just moving through that though. It's like, how did that make you feel? It didn't make me feel that good. And I probably would have been better just, eating a piece of chicken and some veggies.
Being more mindful.
But so but that is that kind of all or nothing mentality, I think, can be limiting. And it's something that we address a lot. And one of my favorite things to move through as a coach. I love it on the other end of that when people are eating adequately. And I love that. Yeah.
And, it makes me think of, there's a lot of like noise around and PR around these new weight loss medications like Ozempic. And one of the kind of ways that they're branding is like, oh, it reduces food noise, right? You're not having to worry about maybe overeating or what somebody's going to be thinking about because you're just not hungry and you're not eating. And I feel like this is just a beautiful, like maybe more redeemed example of like, actually there's a way through this where you can just get rid of that without having to medicate yourself in this way.
Right.
That's encouraging to hear. Another thing that came to mind too, and I experienced this yesterday. So we did every year, my brother-in-law comes over, my wife's cousin comes over, and Danae and them do like a big cookie bake, and then they swap cookies and whatever, and it's a whole thing. And now we have the kids, and a neighbor came over, and Danae made these like really delicious, like healthier cookies. But let's be honest, when I'm eating 4 of them, they're not healthy, right? But because I'm not just eating one, I'm eating 4. But I came in yesterday and I went beelined it for where I knew they were, and they were out. And so I'm like, well, and I ended up having a piece of chicken and a salad, and like just ended up like, I should just like fuel myself better. But just that little environmental shift of like, it wasn't easy, and she wasn't home, so I couldn't be like, where are they? And she's only making them 5 at a time. She's like, I'm helping you self-regulate. I'm like, good, because I'll eat the whole thing because they're so delicious. But that was like a little hack for me that I was like, I'd probably gone too long without having a snack. So I was just like, blood sugar low, like ready to come in and just have 3 or 4 cookies and just veg for a minute. And just having that A, not there, and then B, being like, okay, let me reflect real quick. Like what part of me am I trying to nourish? Like what does my body really need? And just having that little distance, that little bit of friction gave me enough time to be like, I need to parent myself a little bit better here, and little Danny needs some healthy food right now.
You need something to eat. You're hungry. Yeah. I love that. But for a lot of us, we need to learn to pause in that moment, if that is a possibility. One thing that I think can be really powerful, which you experienced, kind of against your will, but having protein first. When I call it the witching hour when we get home from work, because that's a really tough time for a lot of people because of all those reasons we talked about with the decision fatigue, We have an environmental shift. I mean, there's a few things that kind of play into that in the evening. But if you walk in the door and just force yourself to have protein, like don't say I can't have the cookie or I can't have the whatever. Right. Just, okay, but first I'm going to have, a couple rolls of turkey or whatever your protein is, your go-to. Have that first. And then it just slows everything down. Yeah. And then if you want the cookie, great. But most of the time by then you're like, I'm fine.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Solid.
Yeah.
If you're listening to this podcast or watching it on YouTube, I want you to know that it is not free. Well, you're watching it for free or listening to it for free, but we have a gentleman's agreement here at the Fear No Food podcast. We put a lot of work into this podcast, and all we would ask in return is that you like and subscribe on whatever podcast player that you're listening on, or if you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe. There's no way that I'm going to be able to check to see if you did. That's why it's the gentleman's agreement. Really appreciate if you took the moment to click that link and subscribe.
You had mentioned at one point you love seeing like the ripple effect of when our members really kind of move through some of these big obstacles, or they feel empowered metabolically or with the knowledge, and there's that ripple effect into families and communities. Tell me a little bit more about what you mean by like that ripple effect and how you've seen, whether that's in your own life or within our community at Revitalize. What are some of those like second and third order effects when somebody is losing weight and feeling better and more confident? Like, what does that typically look like? Yeah,
that is one of my favorite things. So a lot of times we'll see, with married couples, like one spouse will come in, they'll do the program, they lose weight, they start feeling great. The weight is one thing, but it's all the other things, right? They become more active. A lot of times they're happier, there's more joy, they're working through some of this fear and food and on, the emotional stuff too. It's not just, food related. And then the spouse is like, oh, wow, I'm seeing this change. I want that too. And they start making changes, or there's just changes happening in the house, in the kitchen, environmental shifts, kind of like you were talking about, like, oh, all of a sudden that one item isn't there anymore. Yeah. And all of a sudden we're eating a lot more veggies every day, and they start feeling better, and they start incorporating and changing their lifestyle. And then it changes the way their children are eating and their activity levels. And we have clients where not just the nuclear family, but the brother and his family and the grandparents. I mean, where the whole family has done the program and changed their lives. And to me, that is so potent. And even outside of the family, we see clients come in that it affects in the office environment. Where now they're, and some of our clients they're leaders in their workplace, and people are looking up to them. And when they see them change, bringing their lunch, changing the way they're eating at the luncheons and these types of things, people are watching, and they start making changes, and they start asking, like, what are you doing? And I love that. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah, we talk about just among our leadership and our team here is like, are you like a thermostat or are you a thermometer? Like a thermometer just responds to whatever the environment is and tells you the temperature. A thermostat sets the tone. And I think, we do see that where it's like, oh, like I chose to order something on the healthier side of the menu, and then all of a sudden, like 4 other people in the group opted for the healthier thing. It's almost like they just needed permission or somebody to kind of go first. And it's like there's something about when we kind of have self-leadership, it ripples into other areas of life, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's super powerful. And then, for me personally, like as a coach, so I have this one contact with this one person, but there's the greater effect, of all these people that I may never even speak to. And it's just like, I love that concept.
We did that thing at our kind of holiday party last year where we kind of whiteboarded that of just like, and I would say anybody who's listening, this is just a really great way to kind of reconnect with your work or just what you're doing with your time. And because it was really cool to be like, okay, when I coach this person, who does that affect? And then I'm going to build this spider web of like, wow, like me helping Jim literally help serve kids, foster kids in the foster community, people, missionaries in China. Like it was just insane to be like, wow, me bringing my best self to work or leading myself better. And for my family, here's who it kind of ripples out. It's really cool. Switching gears, what is like one product or modality or supplement that you feel like people are sleeping on right now? Because I feel like you are like, I wouldn't say you're fringe, but I feel like you do. Yeah, fringe isn't the right word, but like
a little bit.
You take care of yourself. You're into meditation and yoga, and you do the cold plunging and the saunaing and all that stuff. Is there anything that you're like, hey, this hasn't like hit the mainstream yet, or a certain supplement that you've come across that you're like, I feel like a lot of people should be taking this, or tell me your thoughts there.
Yeah. Okay. Gosh, I'm always in the data. Like I'm such a research junkie. So I'm always like pulling things. I just calm. Okay. I think, I know that's one of our supplements, but that is such a powerful supplement. And I had kind of toyed with that supplement. Like maybe I tried it, didn't really notice. And then I think you sent out an email and talked about the L-theanine and having it with your caffeine. And I'd already done this research about cortisol and the whole impact of caffeine on our cortisol. So I started taking it in the morning. And the way I supplement is I'll take it for a little while and then I'll stop taking it and then just note am I noticing any changes? Well, I definitely noticed the difference when I don't take it. And the reason why...
What was the difference?
Oh, just maybe mood. For me, I always use my energy as my gauge. So if I feel like I can show up for my family, show up for clients, show up for coworkers in the way that I want to, I'm good. And if I can't, then I'm going to start asking some questions. Am I getting enough sleep? Am I managing my stress? Am I fueling properly?
Kind of going through that revitalized wellness
exactly.
triangle.
No,
nutrition,
I do.
lifestyle, supplements.
Yes. Am I doing things I enjoy? Where's my joy? Am I, taking care of these areas? And if not, and then maybe there's some things like, okay, well, do I need to supplement? Do I need to bring in a supplement? So energy, but really mood. So anxiety, maybe leveled up. I notice if people are irritating me all around me and it's not them, it's me. Yeah. So that to me is a red flag, okay, what's going on? So that's something that Calm definitely helps with. And I notice a huge difference. And I do think stress management, even though we talk about it, right? We talk, stress, we all have stress and stress and stress. But when we really, really are, wanting to create routines, what is stress management? What does that even mean? Right? But that's actionable, actionable activities, whether that's, exercise, supplementation,
going for a walk,
meditating, yoga, even the cold plunging and the dry sauna, all of those things really is to address that. So that's kind of my little passion research moment. So that's, and I guess we're not necessarily sleeping on that, but I think that we need to take it more from just talk to what can I actually do and how do I fit that into my life? Because I think
what I see is there's just this move to how do I remove everything that irritates me from my life? And then you kind of just have this self-focused, you just become this self-focused, inwardly focused thing. And it's there's always going to be stress. There's always going to be these different stimuli. So how do you have that framework where it's okay, what's my nutrition like? What are my lifestyle choices? What are the supplements that could be helping that? Calm. I love that one. I feel like L-theanine is one that hasn't popped off yet.
We've been on. I'm glad it's not just me then.
And what's cool about it is that it's great for helping the mind calm down. If seasons of anxiety, great for kind of a bedtime routine, but also if you do like coffee and want to kind of mitigate some of the jitters, taking it with caffeine in the morning. Non-habit forming, which is pretty cool.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And you do notice the difference. Gosh, there was something you said that made me think of something else. One other thing in that area, and this is food related, and we do talk about it a lot, but protein. I feel all day long I'm protein. Even when people are in loss, protein. So I do think that we're kind of sleeping on it. There's a lot of talk, if you're in that space. Sure. But it's just what is the right amount of protein, and what is that supposed to look like, and why is that why? Right now I've been using, and this is we're getting into the weeds, but
give us a general rule of thumb.
Yeah. So a general rule of thumb, 1 gram per pound of your ideal body weight can be a good, starting point. I like 1.6 grams per kilogram of body weight is what I use when, calculating macros for people. And then just making sure people are eating protein right from the start of the day. It's like your second job.
Yeah.
Eating protein
and
is
it
your
is
second
hard.
job.
Like I feel like, because I have found as I think working here, you end up having to really like, am I walking the walk? And I can easily just be way under eating protein, what I feel like, especially for my activity levels. And I was working with a trainer and he's like, Dan, what are you doing? Like, this is not healthy. So I'm trying to like do that. But tracking is just like monotonous to me a little bit. So I would love to hear your thoughts there. Now we're turning this into a Coach Dan.
I know. That's
Coach,
okay.
Coach,
That's
Coach
all right.
Weekly.
Let's do it.
And then the second is just like, that's like a lot. Like, that is a lot. I find it extremely difficult because I'm either eating a ton of meat, which I don't love to do that volume, or I'm like eating a ton of dairy or scooping, how do you do it?
It is that.
It is that. Yeah. Because I feel amazing when my protein is up. Like I'm just better. I am better mood. Right. I feel like I'm tapping out 22-year-olds at the jiu-jitsu gym. I feel like a beast.
And
but
that's what we're sleeping on.
Yeah.
That you feel like a beast because you feel good because protein, we are satiated. It helps with our energy production. It supports our muscle mass, which, is like one of the most important, organ systems that we have for health, for longevity. And we need to fuel that adequately, which is more than we think, but it does require, there's sometimes more meat. And if you are a vegetarian or vegan, we definitely need to really focus on those options, combinations of the beans and rice and those types of things. But it's a lot. I wish there was a magic wand, but it requires some kind of planning ahead. A little intentionality. But like you said, it's like when you do it and you feel the difference and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I want to keep feeling that way and beating 22-year-olds in the jiu-jitsu gym. And
my mother-in-law always humbles me. She's like, how's jiu-jitsu? I'm like, well, it's cooler than that. No, that's great. I love that. What is alarming you right now in like the health and wellness space or in our communities? Is there anything that you're like, I'm really alarmed by this trend, this fad, this fill in the blank? Is there anything that's alarming you? And then the second question will be like, what's most exciting you right now?
Yeah. So I think the inactivity of our young people, and I know I kind of talked about that a little bit before, is alarming to me right now. And the dependence on the phones and the iPads and all those things, I'm really concerned about that for like ongoing physical, because these little people are going to be big people, and setting that precedent of inactivity that early, that concerns me. And
not to mention, like, what's that doing to your brain? You look at ADHD, like
it goes
all
on
this stuff.
and
then you hear that like the people who've like created some of these like technologies and softwares don't let their kids even have like phones until they're like 16, 17. You're like, what?
Right.
What have we done?
Right. No, exactly. And, luckily yours are little, so no phone. Keep them off the phones. And my husband is a teacher, and to hear like the changes that he talks about in high school age children, the difference, because he's been teaching for, 25 years or so, like the difference in creativity. That's really where I kind of hear, less creativity, less, problem solving skills. But, if we feel like we just constantly have to be stimulated and entertained, we have to like turn those things off, get bored.
Yeah.
Getting bored is important. I mean, that's where our creative juices start flowing, and we go outside and go to, maybe go for a run, whatever, or draw a picture or whatever. But something happens in that discomfort, just like everything else. We have to be uncomfortable.
Talk about ripple effects. I feel like we see that. I've experienced it when I'm a little bit more like, hey, I'm going to do a focus on this thing. It's like I end up wanting to watch less movies. I'm going to bed earlier. My sleep's better when I'm doing these things, because you're just like, I'm just looking at my whole diet in general, not just like what I'm eating, but like what am I taking in? Like what is that exposome we talked about? Like what's just washing over your biology?
Exactly. So that's probably my biggest concern right now. And then always and as we talked, I can be extreme sometimes with food, because I love the farmer's market, and I want all the grass-fed, local, organic, because it's good. It really is good. But the problem is it's not affordable. It's not, it's not affordable to, mass people. I mean, there's issues with that, but I love it. I love it. And I will go to the grocery store, and you walk down the aisles, and it literally, like, I get mad. I like start yelling stuff out loud.
It's violence. It is violence.
It is. Number one, if I'm hungry, there is violence because I'm like, there is nothing in this whole store I can eat, and that's not cool. But then, what is in this food? You turn over the package, there's 150 ingredients. They're all chemicals. And for us to think that doesn't impact our bodies and our children and our loved ones, it does. It impacts our brain, it impacts our immune system, our hormonal health. Don't even get me started on microplastics. Like, totally. It's a whole separate podcast. Yeah. We won't even. I'm sorry I even said that. Yeah. But no. So whole foods. Going back to the basics, keeping it simple. So that's what concerns me. Ingredients in food, chemicals in food. Yep.
Well, Leigh, thank you. I look up to you. This was very enlightening for me. I loved having you on the team, and I know you bless a lot of our members. And thanks for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, you're welcome.